Welcome to the UPoker Academy lecture series designed to make you a better poker player. This is the practical lesson on short-handed hold'em. We are playing here at a six-handed game, and we're about to sit in for the first time. Now, short-handed plays a little bit differently from full ring, as we've discussed. Players are often more aggressive. Players are getting all in with weaker hands, and we want to talk about when is it going too far, when are players making big mistakes, and when should you be confident calling with something weaker. So a hand just happened, and I'm looking through the hand history right now. Oh, nothing much happened there. Interesting to note in this game, the players that we respect are Solkar. The players that we don't respect are Mindbang. Solkar is a reasonably good player, Mindbang not so much. So we're going to try to figure out what exploits we have in this game against all of the players, but specifically Mindbang, and we're going to see how we can exploit him in a short-handed situation. So we have Jack 9, plays pretty well short-handed. We can catch top pair, which is usually good in a short-handed situation. He did limp before the flop, which indicates to me he most likely doesn't have the ace, but we're not going to make a read until we know a little bit more about this opponent. So we are going to go out and bet here on the river because we're not confident that we have the best hand, and we don't know if we can take it down on the showdown. So we're just going to bet to pick that up. If we had had something like a king, we would most likely have checked and just tried to pick that up in a showdown. So we've got 7-8 offsuit in the small blind. A reasonable hand to play since it's limped around. We will call and see what we can flop. And we don't flop anything, but it was limped around, and we can't be sure. Nobody has the jack, but we're pretty confident they don't have the ace. So we're just going to check. The two most likely didn't help anybody. Not confident no one has the jack yet. If it checks around one more time, we can consider firing out a bet. Okay, I don't think we're going to fire one out with the 10 coming against two opponents. If we just had one opponent, we'd definitely be firing here. But with two opponents, somebody most likely caught a jack or a 10 at some point. Okay, ace-7 suited on the button is a playable hand. Then we are most likely going to play this with a raise, and we will. Let's go and raise it to 35. Enoch has been limping, so he's got a wide range of hands here. We Bales did call, and Enoch did fold. So We Bales could have any range of hands here. Most likely doesn't have a king because there are two already out. So we are going to go in and bet. And we take that one down with a c-bet. Ace-10 is definitely a playable hand in a short-handed poker. So we are going to go in and raise this one more time. And Mindbang is going to call, so we did get heads up against our fish, and we did catch our ace. So we are going to go in and bet. And he does call. Against this opponent, we will be betting 3 streets. And we do take it down on the turn with another bet. So as you can see, we're already up 116 chips simply from raising and taking down the pot. Jack 6 not playable. We're just going to fold. So we really haven't seen much action on this table. It is playing relatively tightly. We're going to need to see some showdowns before we can get some reads on our opponents. That's an underbet to the pot. It's a third of the pot, which usually indicates a draw. Might have something like Queen Jack here. Definitely don't put him on the ace. Might have had the king, but we will see. We don't expect him to bet here again. That would indicate to me a busted flush draw. And Mind Bank does fold. The 2-5, even though it is of hearts, which are my favorite suit, is going to be a fold here. So an interesting way to understand the difference between shorthanded and full ring is take a full ring table and take the first 3 seats out of it. Then you've got a shorthanded table. So essentially this would play like if you were in a full ring table and the first 3 players always folded and we were late position and middle position. So you don't ever have early position. So you can take your existing starting hand chart or whatever you're using for full ring and easily transition it to shorthanded by just saying the first 3 players folded. And it's exactly the same. Traditionally in shorthanded games, players do designate this as early position, middle position, late position, and button. Notice this game is playing very passively. It's being checked around quite often. We are in the big blind with a weak ace. Weak aces are tricky to play in shorthanded. They're easy to play in full ring because you just fold them. And in shorthanded, you often fold them as well. We're going to see how this hand plays out before we decide how we want to move forward. And it is going to get folded to us, which is the best result we could have hoped for. We have 7-4 of hearts, a small blind. This is a middling hand. If it does get limped in several places, we might be able to find a call here, but most often this is going to be simply a fold. It's not connected enough, it's not 6-7 of hearts, and if it's raised, it's definitely going to be a fold. Okay, so we've got ace-king suited. This is a monster hand in any poker game, and it has been raised 4 times to the big blind by our fish and called. So, it's been called in 3 places. Oftentimes, when you have that much money, 135 chips in the pot, it's best just to go all in with ace-king. It doesn't play well against calls, and if you re-raise, you're in a very weak position. You've put 120 or 160 in, and then you've still got 400 behind. You have to decide if you're going to bluff with no pair. So if we do just go all in, we've got an easy chance to pick up a bunch of chips, and if anybody calls us, they're either flipping with us or we are significantly ahead. Ace-king often plays better with an all-in bet than it does with a re-raise. What I look for to decide how I'm going to play my ace-king is essentially how much money's already in the pot. In that case was a perfect example. It was raised and then called in 2 other places, and it was raised more than 3 times the big blind. It was raised 4 times the big blind. So there were already 13.5 big blinds in the pot. To me, that's just, I'm just going to take that right there with an all-in bet and hope that somebody with ace-queen finds a way to call me. So Jack 9 in a middle position is definitely going to be a fold for us. Even suited this far out of position would be a fold. We're seeing that people are putting in lots of chips before the flop. Our best bet to make money is going to be with re-raises before the flop, or with raises before the flop that follow up with value bets after the flop. So we are playing long ball, which is big pot poker. We're not going to be playing small ball. Jack 9 plays great in small ball pots, when you can raise and then bet the flop and the opponent folds a significant portion of the time. That's when a hand like Jack 9 becomes really valuable. In a big pot game, it's not going to be so valuable for us. Interesting thing just happened in chat. Mindbang said, "I'm not here to accomplish anything other than the thrill of playing poker." So everybody plays poker for a reason. Some people play to win money, like I do. Some people play to think about the game, like maybe you do. That would be more like a chess style game. Mindbang is here for the thrill, and a lot of players do play for the thrill. And if you bear that in mind, you can start to think like the opponent does. So here we are just going to bet out with a big bet. We're hoping somebody has a draw or a 10 and they're willing to play on with us. And we do get called. And that card doesn't help him at all, so we are going to make another bet. We are confident that we're ahead at this point. If he does raise, we are going to get it all in with him. And that didn't help him at all, so let's go in and make a nice value bet on the river. And we'll hope he puts me on a bluff. And just like that, we played a big pot, we won a big pot. And it didn't cost us anything to get in because we were in the blind. That's where we're going to make our money at this table. So King 5 and the small blind's going to be a weak hand. We're just going to fold this here. Poker is as much about playing the big pots well as it is about saving chips when you're not going to be looking at the kind of pot you want. With King 5, we're out of position. We've got a horrible kicker, and it doesn't make a great big pot hand. So since all the stars are aligned against us, even though it's only $5 instead of 10 to call, we still find a fold there. So 4-6 is going to be a fold. But let's look at that last hand that went down. That was interesting. So it was limp for the flop. Flop is T7-2, check, check, check. The ace comes. The player with ace-jack bets 40, which is pot. And it's called by the player with ace-3. Definitely a bad call there. The river comes with a 3, and the player with the ace-jack bets 90, and the player with ace-3, who's just turned into 2-pair, just calls. That would be a place where I would find a raise. I would probably raise to about 270, or at least 200. But on to the next one. So we've got pocket twos. Pocket twos make a set, which is a great hand for us. We have 87 big blinds. And everybody here covers us, so we are going to make a raise with this. A little raise to 30. Hope we can get several players involved, and then flop a 2 and stack somebody. This is a pot sweetener raise. We make this raise because we want to have a big enough pot that if we do flop our 2, we can make a large bet on the flop. rather than a small bet. Because a large bet on the flop and a large bet on the turn means a very large bet on the river, which is what we want to get to. And we do get the large flop that we need. Notice if we had flopped our 2 here, if it had been 10-7-2, we'd bet about 100. We'd have 700 left. Pot would be at least 320. Then we'd bet 250, and we'd have 450 left, and we'd bet 450 on the river, and that would play out beautifully as a set hand because we'd get our entire stack in. That was an interesting hand. Let's go back and look at that again. So we raised, and it's called by King 7 offsuit on the button, and also by Queen 10 suited after a limp. So this was not a bad call. This was a pretty awful call. Queen 10 flops top pair. He bets out into us. Middle pair calls. Wow, he gets the trips on the turn. He bets again, but the flush card comes on the river and he checks it down. That would have been a bet on the river, I believe, for me. We do have trips and we've got a great kicker, so the flush card wouldn't really scare me that much. Interesting that Solkar did call with a King 7. It's a really weak call, so we can make 2 reads from this. One, Enoch is very scared of value betting. He's very scared of scare cards. We've seen that on hands before. He doesn't really value bet like he should. And Solkar will call with any king before the flop. And if he's calling with any king, he's probably calling with any ace. So an interesting hand's developed here. What's happened so far? It was limped around before the flop. Flop came 4, 5, 10. It went check, 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 20, 20, 20, 20. Tom check raises to 80. Fold, 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 call, fold. And Tom bets 170 and folds. So a very interesting play there. We expect to see a set. To check the flop, though, after 2 players had check and just 1 player was remaining, I don't know if I'd check the flop there. I'd probably go in and bet because you've got to get that pot building. But he did obviously make the right call because we Bills did bet. And it went call, call, and if he expected that to happen, then that was a good play. So we've got Solkar raising from middle position to 4 times the big blind, and a re-raise. That's not big enough of a re-raise. We'd want to see 120 there. It's just a min-raise. This doesn't ever ask your opponent to fold his hand, which is why it's a weak raise. And he does call, and we've got a gigantic pot brewing. After Enoch calls the 3-bet, out of position, a very, very bad call. He should be either 4-betting there or folding, and if he's 4-betting, he better have something like queens or better. So it does get betted, small underbet to the pot. It is called. Interesting. It is called in 2 places. And that's the scare card. That's the card you don't like to see if you're Enoch and you called that flop with a jack. It's the card you don't like to see if you've got pocket aces, because it makes lots of 2-pair and straight hands. So it's a bit of a scary card. He does go in and bet again. This time it's just about half pot. Just a little bit over. And it does fold around, so that was a scare card, and he does take it down. Curious to see what all the 3 players had in there, but nobody wanted to go to a showdown to give us that information. Is raised again by Mind Bang. Solkar will likely call here. And check behind. Solkar had better bet out here, and he does not. So the check behind, that's going to be an interesting read if we do get this to showdown, to see what he raises and checks behind with. And we will see it as pocket 3s. Not a bad raise, not an awful check behind. Solkar would have called. Interesting to note that Solkar did limp under the gun and then called a raise with Queen 5 suited. So we're going on and making the read on Solkar. Contrary to the read we made before that he was a good player, we're going to go on and say that he's very loose. And reads do change over time. Players do change their style. They do learn more. They do forget some things that they've learned, and at the end of the day, they do tilt. And it looks like Solkar is having a pretty heated exchange in the chat at the moment with Mindbang, and maybe he limp called because he's tilting against Mindbang, or maybe he's tilting against the entire table. So nothing much happening in this hand. This would be a great mover to bet at if you're Solkar. Your head's up. Unless you've got an 8 or a 10 or a 3, I'd be betting here. Good decision by Weeb to check that down with the ace high. It is a hand of that showdown value. Okay, so we do have ace jack on the button. It's going to be a playable hand. And it is called by Enoch, who is a loose caller, so we are going to make a raise. And we hope to get a heads up with him. And we do. And we do flop our jack on a suited board. So we are going to make a sizable bet here to defend our value. We're going to bet about 75. And we do take it down again. So if you notice, we're up about 378 since we set down. And we haven't ever gone to showdown to win that much. We have just been stealing pots and betting and making hands and value betting them down. And because this is big pot poker, we are playing for those big pots. We're playing to make hands that we can value bet. We were playing a small pot game, a game where lots of people were folding a lot. You would see us raising more hands, you would see us c-betting more as a bluff, but not this game. It's just not right for it. So a lead out on the flop by the new player at the table. And he takes it down. Most likely going to be an aggressive player now that he's led out in his first hand. Now we do have Jack 7, that's going to be a fold. Now this is a good flop to bet at. It's most likely going to get folded. Most likely the first person to bet at that pot would have taken it down. And 10-4 in the big blind. It's not much. And we do catch the 4 and the ace is out, so we are going to go on and bet this. Betting here protects our outs. There are a lot of cards that he has that could come on the turn, which would make our hand very weak. So we go on and bet there to take the pot down, to defend our equity, to force him to call with something like a flush draw or a straight draw or whatever overcards he might have, and in which case he would be making a mistake to call. So the 6-3 offsuit in the small blind, we're not getting the odds we need to make a call there, so we are just going to fold it. An overbet to the pot. That tends to indicate to me a player is trying to build the pot because he's got a straight or he's got top 2 pair. I sometimes use the overbet strategy, especially if I need to get the pot to build really quickly. So we have Jack 9. This is going to be a fold. We have Enoch in the pot, and Jack 9 really doesn't make the kind of hand we want to play against Enoch, unfortunately. So we do give up a button there. There's not much to see on that hand. Okay, ace 10, late position. It's going to be a raise. So we are going to make it 40 to go. Tom Horn, we haven't seen much out of him. This player, we haven't seen much out of him. He is new to the table. So this is going to be a tricky spot for us because the pot is so big. Assuming we have 2 more calls here, it's going to be a little bit too big for our hand, so we're going to have to figure out how we can shrink the size of the pot down. Okay, so here's the plan. We've got 2 players in, and that's a very, very wet flop, so we are going to check this and forego the c-bet. That's going to help shrink the size of the pot, assuming no one else bets. And the 4 on the turn doesn't improve anybody's hand. So we'll see what happens here. Tom has checked again. So we are going to make a little bet here. And 9-7 does call. Maybe he has a draw. Maybe he has a 9. Most likely would have bet the flop with that queen though. And we did brick on the river. Do we want to bet and get called by 9, or do we want to take our showdown value? I don't think he's going to bet at us with a bluff here, so we are just going to check. He does have 2 6s, so exactly what we put him on, a weak pair. So that was played well by everybody in the pot. Even though we lost chips, we played it right. We decided to control the size of the pot. We decided not to bluff the river, which you would have most likely called. And simply by checking the flop, it allowed us to get some more details about Tom's hand. Unfortunately, because we didn't have position, we weren't able to see 9-7 check twice, which would have given us a lot more information about his hand, and allowed us to control the river better. If we did flop river the ace, we could have bet the river. But in essence, that's the reason why we like having position, and not why it's why we don't like somebody to call behind us, because it really limits our options. But that hand was really played well by everybody, except perhaps Tom Horn, who might have made a weak call before the flop. So this will bring us to the end of the lecture. Thank you for joining us at UPoker Academy. Please check us out on riskoriented.com for more poker strategy delivered directly to your YouTube account. Please like us and subscribe to us, And for more poker strategy right now, continue on to our next poker lecture by clicking here.